So let's say I want to render this in Keyshot. So with all these subtools selected, they're all poly painted, they all have vert color. All I need to do is go to renderer, go to external renderer, turn on Keyshot. Auto merge shouldn't come into play, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. Everything should be fine. You can group by certain things, but I'm just going to go ahead and show this. It throws in the Keyshot. So with renderer selected as Keyshot, I can hit BPR, and it's going to load up whatever version of Keyshot you have. Now, you're going to need ZBrush to Keyshot bridge, which is loading right there, and that's just a way to bridge ZBrush files to Keyshot. You're also going to need Keyshot purchased. If you have a pro version of Keyshot or Keyshot you just purchased separately from ZBrush, you can use that. It'll import fine, but then you have to buy the ZBrush bridge. You can also buy the ZBrush-centric version of Keyshot for a little bit cheaper, but you have to go through ZBrush in order to use it. Either way, I got the pro version of Keyshot. So now we're in Keyshot here. I can hold down Control and left click, and I can kind of spin my environment around. I'm going to do a kind of a Keyshot deep dive a little bit later. But for now, I'll just give you a kind of a quick overview. Keyshot is a CPU-based renderer, so it's not like Octane, it's not like Redshift. It's using your CPU to render your objects here, and if you kind of let Keyshot sit there, it kind of reses in. So that way you can kind of evaluate quickly, and then if you want to kind of see how good it is, you can let it res in for a little bit longer. So we also have a bunch of materials over here. So if I go over here, let's go into our plastic here. We can open that up. We can do hard, plastic, shiny. Let's say I want to make this hard plastic shiny. Well, it kind of already is. If we double click this object here, we go into scene mode and we just tap this object or the leaf, you're going to see every single one of these is our subtool. So here's our worm, here's our glasses, here's our eyeball. Anything that was a subtool is a separate object, and it also went ahead and imported the materials with it. If we're in the scene tab here and we go to materials, you're going to see we have all these materials imported. If we double click any of these, like this leaf for example, you're going to see that we have a Z-matte, ZBrush, polysphere material assigned to it with a diffuse. If you go into the textures tab, you're going to see it has that matte cap diffuse plugged in. All that good stuff. So I'm going to replace all of these materials with another material. I'm going to do hard shiny on this plastic right here. So I'm going to just replace that one. Let's go into hard rough for this one. And if you want to, let's see, we go into translucent. You know what? I don't want to get too fancy. Let's stay with plastic, rough, and we'll do a hard rough, this orange one. It's a little too orange. I'm going to double click this one. It's going to take me to the material for that. I'm going to go to the properties here, the diffuse. I'm going to click that. I'm just going to make it a little bit lighter and a little less saturated. Hit OK. And you can also change the roughness. So if I double click this one, it's super shiny right now. If I crank the roughness up, it's going to make it a little bit more matte. And if you want to evaluate reflections, right now if we go to environment, the default environment is under studio at the very bottom. You have a startup environment. You can change it to any lighting environment you want. In fact, ZBrush Bridge comes with a bunch of environments that are, you can go to the Pixelogic Backstreet and you can load that in, and now it's being lit by this Backstreet, what I'm presuming is a Pixelogic. And you're also going to see the reflections from that Backstreet come in. If you go to studio, we can go interior, we can put it in a conference room, and now we're getting a little bit more reflections going on. You can go to an apartment. Yeah, I think that'll be fine. You know what, let's do the conference room. So with the conference room selected, if you want it to be lit by the conference room, and again, you can do Control left click and just rotate that environment around, or once you have it loaded in, you can go to your environment tab here and just do the rotation. Once you have this all set up, if you don't want to see that environment, but you want it to be lit by that environment, you can go to your environment tab here, go to color, and you can just drop that down to just a blank color here. So you're still being lit, but it's just doing that. Or you can do a black backplate image, which if you go to my YouTube channel, Intro to ZBrush Part 1, I've got a render set up here where you can do a cool render. Let me go ahead and turn this down. You can do a cool render where you bring it in and you load up a backplate, and it makes it look like you're a real sculptor because you're rendering it as if you're in a real sculpting environment. So a lot of really cool stuff you can do with this. But again, just to keep this short, we got this. Let's go ahead and go back to our plastics here. We'll make this just kind of a fun. We'll do a shiny green. And for this one, I don't mind if the green's a little bit darker and the roughness is a little bit up for it. Now, if you want to use this shiny green on the leaf, if you drag it from here, it's going to assign another instance. If we go to our scene here in our materials, we now have two hard shiny plastic greens. If you want to use this green on that, what you need to do is drag it from here onto there, and now it's using one material to drive both of them. So if you double click this one or you double click any of these in your scene, it's going to the same place, and you can change the roughness for both of them. If you ever do that and you're like, you know what, I want to change the leaf a little bit more, you can right click this object, do unlink material, and now again in your material tab you'll have two of them. If you don't want to get confused, just double click your object or double click the one, and we'll call this leaf. We'll double click this one, we'll call this worm. And you know what, we have the worm as plastic right now. What if we want to change that to like a translucent so we can kind of see through them a little bit? Or if you really want to see through them, you can even make them a liquid or a glass. And he may not render that great. You're going to need to go to your lighting environment. Right now lighting is on basic so we can navigate quickly. If you want to go even faster, you can turn on this performance mode up here, this button, and it's just going to be super quick so you can just kind of get stuff placed. Now if you turn that off and you go from basic to product, that's basically going to turn on global illumination. If you go to interior, that's going to turn on an interior mode that renders noisy areas a little bit better. And then full simulation is going to turn on ground illumination and caustics. And caustics is what's going to make your glass render correctly. It's going to really slow down your computer. I've got a bunch of stuff open and I'm recording at the same time, and I've still got that video playing on YouTube. Let me stop that. But it's going to give you a really nice, accurate render. This looks like it's really made out of glass. So I'm going to change that back to basic here. I'm going to double click this poor guy. You know, we'll do translucent, and we'll give it a subsurface color and a surface color here. And I went into full simulation mode. I really cranked up that translucency, so it's going to look even cooler with that. But I'm going to go ahead and go back to basic. And what else we have left? We have his eyeballs left, but he's looking okay. So if you want to change these things, go ahead and change them. If you don't worry about it. There's a lot of extra things you can do in 6 here. I'm going to change this even darker. For example, just a sneak preview, we can go to Edit. We can do Add Geometry. Let's add a ground plane. I'm going to double click that ground plane. I'm going to change it from a ground material to like a plastic, shiny plastic. So now we're kind of reflecting the apple as well as the environment around it. I can even go in here to Edit, Add Geometry. We can throw in a sphere. We can click that sphere, and I don't know which one of these is, I mean, this may not be available to you if you didn't get the Pro one. I'm just using what I have. I got the 6 Pro. So I can move this out and up, and I can even go over here to the materials, and we can go into our lighting materials. We can do area light. We can throw an area light on this object. I'm going to change it from lumen to watt. And now I can light it with this area light that I can now move around. And if I want it to be visible to my object but not to my camera, all I got to do is double click that to get the material settings, then turn off visible to camera. So it's still lighting my object, it's just not lighting, it's just not showing up in my camera view here. In this case, I'm going to turn down the power just a bit. And if I just want my light, the area light I just made to light my environment, I can go to my environment tab and I can turn this brightness down. So now just my light is lighting the scene, or I can crank up the brightness of my environment a little bit, and I can have kind of a dark room with a single spotlight on it, all sorts of cool things. And if I want to do my final, I'll just go here to full simulation, or I can go up here to render, and I can render to all my render passes, which is my depth pass, my clown pass, which is my material IDs that we went through on the BPR stuff. You can render all the layers, add it to a PSD if you want to, if you choose PSD from the dropdown. You can do these presets for your image size. You can just type it in here. All sorts of cool stuff. Here's your samples, image, and stuff. But again, I'm not going to get too deep into this. I'm not going to go into a full Keyshot thing just for ZBrush Core. But at its base, it's a really cool way to kind of go in there and do really, really nice product renders of your ZBrush Core creations.